Let's talk about class archetypes in triangle strategy. So in a previous video, I went over class roles, which are kind of like what the class is generally good at. So it's like kind of abstract, like Roland is just good at like damage and AoE damage. Sarah Noah is just kind of good at single target damage and some utility. So these are like abstract concepts that, Benedict is good at utility. So the main things units excel in are either damage, which is how much damage they deal, shutdown, how much they can reduce enemy effectiveness, utility, how much they can improve an ally's effectiveness, and healing, how much health they can restore. So these are like the abstract things, like in terms of, like if I say Roland is a damage carry, what I mean is he either deals high single target damage or high AoE damage. In this case, he does a bit of both, and when you use him correctly, he can deal really high single target and AoE damage. So kind of like how Frederica is a damage carry for magic, Roland is a damage carry for physical. He's a little bit more durable than her. As you can see here, her physical defense is 25, whereas his is 48. Her magical defense is a little bit better, but his isn't bad. So he's definitely on average more durable, and he'll probably be in more danger, but if she gets focused by the wrong thing, she's dead. So all right, so let's just kind of go over types of units. So Sarah Noah is a bruiser. He has like medium durability, medium damage, medium utility. He can't extend too far. His movement kind of sucks. So he's kind of rooted to where he's at. He can't just rapidly reposition. Like Roland can move 7 squares and then use rush to move 3 more. So he can rapidly reposition and maneuver around. Whereas Sarah Noah is kind of anchored. So he only can move 5. He has no way to increase vertical height. He can't jump. He can't use any abilities to make him move further. He can reach out further with Hawk Dive, but he's very anchored to the team. So I would describe him as like a medium damage bruiser. And then Roland is like a damage carry. He deals good single target and AoE damage. And then we have Benedict, who is pure utility. I would call him an advisor. So there's 2 advisors in my eyes. There's Benedict and Julio, both of which have decent defense. Like they have good defensive stats. They have like kind of medium-ish strength, so they can kind of contribute to damage and chip damage when enemies push into your backlines. But if you look at his kit, every single one of his abilities is like a buff of some kind. Unit takes 2 turns. Unit's turn is next. Increased jump and movement, increased physical and magic defense, increase strength and magic attack, and then make up to 5 allies invincible for 1 hit. So he's all about utility. So I would call him an advisor. I mean, that is basically what he starts out as, I believe, or maybe that's Julio, but the game calls him a master strategist, which if they say anything like that, it generally means they're a utility. Then next you have Frederica. She's a damage carry with magic. So if we actually just look at her abilities, it's just all damage abilities. She has some utility by like allowing units to counterattack with fire. So if you put this on a unit and they counterattack, the attacker will also take fire counterattack damage. And it does increase their fire resistance as well. And then she has some utility in Fire Eater. Allows an ally to get healed instead of harmed by fire. But everything else is just damage. Increase your damage while you're in fire. Increase your damage. Actually, it's in here. You can see here clear skies, fire damage up. Increase your damage when the weather is clear. Next we have Gila. So like these starter classes are it's very obvious what they are. So she's just a healer with like a little bit of utility. She can remove conditions and increase turn order with speed in some instances. But things start to get more complicated. Like we'll skip some of these obvious ones, like Anna, single target damage assassin. She can hit 2 foes, but she generally wants to spike things down. She can put poison on 2 foes, which is cool. She can put them to sleep, but she's mainly a single target damage carry. And then we have Huette. She's like shutdown, put blind on things, freeze them in place. She doesn't have the best damage, but her damage is good enough that it contributes. And then we have a tank, very simple tank that just puts fury on foes. Has some buffs from self, has a debuff, fury, can reposition enemies by ramming them, knock them off high ground. He can make himself invincible for a turn and infuriate all enemies within range. This is an extremely good tanking ability, but if you notice, he has 4 movement. So he is like a lot of these beginning characters are very simple, but the reason I'm making this video is some of these other characters start to get more complicated. So Rudolph is a perfect example of this. He is an archer who has quite bad movement. His jump is decent. but he can put down traps. He has some attacks that can, have some CC. He has an AoE. He has like kind of like a mixed things, like a mixed bag of abilities. So if you compare him to Huette, she's like a shutdown archer with good mobility, and he's like a more damaging archer with like little shutdown. Like he can slumber shot, but it's not the best. Generally slumber has like a low proc rate, but he has like more damage. He does have a lot of utility with steel trap, which is kind of shutdown, but traps can be really inconsistent. So unless you know the enemy is going to move on a certain tile, it can be a waste of a turn. But it is a good ability if you get them set up in advance. So he does have some shutdown, but he's more rooted, whereas Huette can just reposition. So his mobility is bad, so he's kind of like some single target damage with some utility and bad mobility, whereas she is like maybe a little bit less damage, but more... I mean, she probably gets more damage because she grabs high ground and that boosts her damage. But you can kind of see that, like, even just between these two archers, the kits are drastically different. And then we have Corinton. He is like an ice mage carry type of thing. He has like good damage and good utility. He has less damage than Frederica, but he has more utility than her. So he's like kind of like a shutdown damage dealer with some utility in the form of like shield of ice. I'm sorry, wall of ice. He can make ice walls that force enemies to reposition, and it just kind of wastes their time. He also has some AoEs. He can silence. So he has more to his kit than Frederica, but he has less damage in general. But he still is a really good damaging unit that contributes a lot in a huge way. So just because he doesn't have as much damage doesn't mean he's bad. He's like clearly a good unit. And then we have Julio. He's another advisor type. So I would say him and Benedict are like advisors, like units with, like if you look at their stats, pretty decent strength, pretty decent defense, decent health. They can help kill things by smacking them. They get into your backline. They have like poor mobility. Like 5 movement, no ways to grab high ground or increase their mobility. So they're going to be kind of slow, much like Serenoa. They can't rapidly reposition. But he has the ability to remove TP from enemies and grants TP to allies, which is huge in a game where TP is extremely good. Like you need it to do basic abilities and to do crazy strategies. So hugely useful thing to have TP factories. But he's a mostly utility unit that can sometimes smack things for damage. And he doesn't really have too much shutdown. His shutdown would be not on my watch and intimidation to remove TP from like enemies or enemy bosses. So like basic enemy units. And next we have Milo. So she's a more complicated unit as well. It's almost tempting to say she's an assassin, but like her strength is not that high and her damage isn't like huge. But what she can do is she's like a crowd control. She's like a shutdown assassin. So instead of dealing damage, she shuts things down. She converts enemies to allies for up to 2 turns with Heartstealer. For 2 turns. She can AoE paralyze. This isn't the best ability, but Heartstealer is exceptional. And then Power of Love has a 100% chance to proc, and it can hit up to 5 enemies and turn them all against each other and against the enemy team for 1 turn. So just between Heartstealer and Power of Love and Stardust, she has incredible like shutdown. She can also siphon TP and debuff, so that's some shutdown as well. Like pulling TP off an enemy boss can prevent it from using an insane ability that kills a unit. So, and it also reduces their damage output. So both of those effects are really good, and she can profit TP from doing this. She can also put poison on things. So a common thing you can do is you can she also has incredible mobility, and this is default evasion at max level 75. So if you put like an evasion bracelet on her, if you put 2 evasion bracelets on her, she'll get hit she'll almost never get hit. So she's like an evasion tank with shutdown and crowd control. So crowd control I consider shutdown, so that's like the big thing. And then we have Alvora. She's just kind of like a beater. She has pretty good defensive stats. She just kind of runs in and smacks things. Just kind of similar to Serenoa, she has bad mobility, so she can't be too aggressive and has to kind of let enemies come to her. She has some decent like damaging abilities, like Bloody Cross. No Escape is decent just from like debuffing enemies, but she's kind of like a damage with some utility and some shutdown. Next we have Narv. Narv is the perfect example of a hybrid mage. So Narv has a little bit of everything, but doesn't excel at anything. Like even the weapon skill, Mystic Beam, it does like decent damage, hits up to 6 squares, but also heals allies in its path. So it's like Narv is just like straight up mixed everything. Narv has some shutdown. You have like a 30% chance for Spark to paralyze. You have some healing with Sanctuary. It's not the best healing, but it's some. You have some shutdown and control with Icy Breath because frozen tiles reduce enemy movement and reduce their accuracy, so that debuff is useful. You have some damage with Scorch, and then you have some more utility slash shutdown with Whirlwind because you can change the direction enemies face, which can allow your other units to get easy crits on them. And then you have Pierce Defenses, decrease enemies' magic defense when you deal damage to them. This allows other units, especially magical units, to get more damage off, and it also allows Narv to get more damage off on follow-up magic attacks. And then you have +1 range. So Narv is like the perfect example of a hybrid mage. The Narv excels at nothing, but isn't bad at anything either, and can generically be run on any team comp. But you're usually better off going with a specialized unit. But Narv is not a bad unit. But you can kind of get a feel for, like, if you just look at the abilities and like the overall like contribution to the team, it's like obvious what a unit does. So like in this case, Narv is like a general AoE damage dealer with some utility, some shutdown, and some healing. The only problem with Narv, as far as I can tell, is it needs a TP battery. So a TP battery is like Julio, a unit that generates TP for the units, or Medina. So the Narv cannot single cast. Like Narv has no way of recovering TP on his own aside from 1 TP regen per turn, and all of his spells cost 2. So he very likely, and this happens a lot and it's really annoying, he needs a TP battery. He's the only mage in the game that needs one for sure. Other mages like Corinton, if he's standing on ice, he gets TP, or Frederica, if she kills something, she gets TP. So if I go to her weapon, you can see over there at the bottom, KO TP +1. She gets 1 TP if she kills a unit while casting. She can't gain more than 1, so if she kills 2 units, she still just gets 1. But you kind of get the idea that even if she doesn't have a TP battery next to her or within range to feed her TP, if she kills something, you can plan around this and you can get her TP back. Same thing with Corinton. He can get his TP back from just standing on ice, which he can create, so pretty good and useful. So Narv has a lot of issues, but I'll go into that in a different video. But you can kind of get a feel for each unit. I just got Maxwell. This is on my 3rd playthrough. I still need to upgrade his stuff. I'm waiting to get certain upgrade components, so we'll start running him and testing him out as well. Archibald, he's like a damage carry, mostly single target, some AoE, can hit really far away. So it's just useful to think about things in terms of, you know, the damage, shutdown, utility, healing. Like, what is your team missing? Are you missing damage? Are enemies too effective and just killing things for free? Then you need shutdown. Are your units like not getting buffs or just not being effective and there's no like coordination? Then you probably need utility. So like Azana, she has really good single target damage. Circumstantially, she has AoE with Rite of Rain and puddles and making puddles yourself. There's also this broken thing someone discovered where you can give Rite of Thunderstorm, which usually has a 30% hit rate, 100% hit rate with Quahog, I don't know how you say his name, Quahog or whatever, the Time Child. Incredibly broken unit, the Time Child. It probably needs nerfed, but it could give her 100% hit rate, and then she can hit every single enemy on the map with Rite of Thunderstorms with 100% accuracy. So that's a thing. But aside from that gimmick, assuming you're not playing the game with like huge exploits like that, she generally just smacks things with a 60% chance to stun with Rite of Lightning and then creates rain, and is bad with Frederica, who wants clear weather. She gets damage boosted when it's raining for lightning, and similarly she gets damage boosted for wind with tempests. But I would say this is a little bit better. I mean, Rite of Wind is okay, but Rite of Lightning is the main reason to use her. It's good damage, has shutdown, so she's like a single target damage shutdown. And with an abusable gimmick, she becomes an AoE damage shutdown. Then we have Lionel. So he obviously is like a debuffer. So he mostly is shut down. Like you can just look at like his kit. Like right away I can tell you he's shut down. What does he do? He can infuriate. He can debuff. He can tempt. His ability is bad, but he also has endless speech, which is a big shutdown ability that generally will either silence or sleep an enemy, and it also lowers their speed. So big debuff, and then he has a big spike with golden opportunity, but as you can see, it's very expensive. So unless you're like New Game Plus or New Game Plus Plus, or you want to grind out for money for hours, which I personally don't, you can run this, but he's mostly like a debuff bruiser kind of thing. He has like okay stats. He can't really be in the fray too much, and his damage is kind of terrible, but he's like a debuffer. And his damage is okay with golden opportunity, but it's expensive. And then Piccoletta. Okay, so what is Piccoletta? She is a tank, actually. So this is confusing, because it's like, how is she a tank? Like, you look at her defenses. Like, she actually has good physical defense and really good magic defense, and her evasion is insane, so she is an evasion tank. She can create decoys that enemies love to attack because of its low stats, which also contributes to tanking. And the other thing she does is just spam items for chip damage. So that's basically what she wants to do. Her actual strength and like cat racket and ball toss are generally quite bad and not that accurate, but when you use like throwable weapons, which she excels in because of intensive items, increase the damage, and item launcher, increase the range, you get, between the two, you get pretty good range, accuracy, and damage, and she can contribute to damage while tanking. So Piccoletta is a tank. As confusing as that sounds, she's a magical tank. And she tanks through evasion and the creation of decoys, which cause enemies to passively attack them because they have low stats and enemies prioritize things they can kill. So basically, by creating a decoy, it has like constant fury. So yeah. And then Quahog. I don't know if that's how you say his name correctly. That's like how it looks to me. He has a lot of broken abilities. I'll go over him in a different video, but he can just straight up freeze time and then just keep spamming in due course on things to deal AoE damage. He can freeze time and then turn back time someone so that they can act while everything else is frozen. So you could like unfreeze Anna or unfreeze in the one example Izana and then have her use Rite of Thunderstorms, and then she'll hit every single enemy with 100% accuracy on the map and have a decent chance to paralyze them. So that's quite insane. But I would say he's a broken unit. I wouldn't even say he fits into a team comp. He's just broken, and by that I mean he's like blatantly overpowered. He can essentially heal things by doing this. So if they take like 300 damage, he can turn back time, and then they're back to full health, assuming that another turn didn't pass for him. And he also has teleports, move an ally to any location, distorted space, switch positions. So he has teleport and he has switch position. He has spike heal. He has AoE damage for 1, which is insane. It's delayed, but it's still really good. It's still AoE damage for 1 TP. He can stop time. Then he can do this nonsense. So like, and he also has remain and recover. So if he just sits there, he just gets healed. So I mean, he's very squishy. Like he has low health and low physical defense, but he's like blatantly overpowered. And his evasion is meh. So he is very squishy, but like his kit is just too overtuned. So yeah, that is the class archetypes video. You generally have like tanks, you have like damage carries, you have healers, you have advisors, you have bruisers, you have shutdown like utilities and all these things. So like Hasabara, for example, she's kind of bruiser-ish. She doesn't have like the best defensive stats, but she kind of contributes to damage and kind of contributes to healing. So she's kind of like a damaging healer. She can't heal herself, which is annoying, but she can AoE heal, and she can generate TP from trekking for TP. So yeah, she has some AoE, some pushback. I don't think she's that good of a unit, to be honest, because like it's like her kit is just so random. Like healing at point blank isn't the best. Now obviously she has a horse, but like when high ground comes into question, you want a healer that can heal from high ground or heal up to high ground. So like horses are bad at climbing as well, so that's like something to consider. She can throw a unit too with catapult, which is interesting. Like she can just straight up throw a unit, so she can kind of reposition. She has a lot of like utility. She's kind of like a utility damage healer hybrid type of thing. But in my opinion, like, you want units that are more specialized than hybrids, because the specialized units tend to bring the biggest value. I haven't played with Grama too much. I'm going to experiment more with her, but same thing with Giovanna. Yen seems okay, but I still need to level up his stuff. I need to get some materials. Decimal. Decimal's a very weird unit. It's essentially a low damage mage that can hit a bunch of targets at a good range. So I would describe it as a damage carry to some degree, or maybe it's just like, I don't know, like a chip damage type of thing. Like, it has decent damage and it can hit a bunch of foes, but the circumstances are very random. But generally one of these will hit at least like 2 to 3 enemies, which is good. And then it has to pass a turn to get TP or be fed by a battery, because it doesn't regen on its own. It has to wait. So that can be a big downside to it. So it can deal a bunch of chip damage to everything, but then it has to wait or be fed TP or be like nowed or fast acting medicined. So so it is like a damage carry, and it has some of the best range in the game. Has a chance to instantly kill them. Yeah, it has like random effects too. It seems like a decent unit, but it has like low. It's very unpredictable. So like, one of the things you want to do is you want to control what you're attacking and why. And Decimal just kind of randomly hits everything. So like, it might hit an enemy you want to kill, and it probably won't. So that's just kind of its downside. You can't deliberately target things. You can see its range. Its range is like infinite height, and like it hits like almost all of the map. So pretty insane. Yeah, so like, it hits all units end with a 7. If their health is a multiple of 5, if their health is a multiple of 4, a multiple of 3, it's just a very random unit. But I would describe it as a damage carry regardless, because it can deal so much damage, and that is good. So yeah, so those are some of the units. We'll just go over one more. So this guy, he seems to be like an off tank. He has mobility. He can reposition to high ground. He himself is not personally very tanky, but he can use things like Rampart to make allies tankier, and also Shielding Stance. So if you use Shielding Stance and Rampart, you will make an ally you are standing next to incredibly tanky. So he's like an off tank, or like a personal tank. He's called a Wing Guard, which is kind of funny because he's kind of like a wingman. He kind of like helps you tank. His magic defense is horrible though. So like, the fact that he's mobile and can fly will probably put him within range of enemy flyer or enemy mages, which could get him nuked for big damage. So that's like a huge downside, but he's kind of like a personal defense shield guy. Like, he's a very weird unit. I'm still playing, like experimenting, trying to see what he's good at. But as far as I can tell, like, he's a tank that has vulnerabilities. Like, he's weak to arrows and magic, and it's like, his personal tanking isn't that best, or isn't that good. Shield bash is decent, but like, the thing with tanks is that they put fury on things and they want to tank it. They don't want to get killed by the fury. He could, for example, I guess, like, fly up to a mage and shield bash it, then start hitting him with the book, allowing him to tank with his high physical defense. So that is something you could do. And aerial assault is decent for like follow-up damage. So if he's like flying around with Huette, he's the only other flyer in the game aside from Huette. But he could fury things to pull damage off her. He could make her tanky with Safe Haven and Shielding Stance. He can make himself a little bit tankier with Fortify, but then it reduces his movement, which is annoying. Sorry, not Safe Haven. Ramparts and Shielding Stance. Safe Haven allows him to heal a little bit, and then Ironclad allows him to take less damage when getting attacked from the front, which is good, because if you fury things on high ground, usually the high ground is like a single lane, so then the enemy's forced to attack you from the front. So he can be quite tanky with Fortify and Ironclad, and then he heals himself. So he's kind of like a flanker tank, which is really weird, but he could travel with a small group of like assassins, so like a Milo, an Anna, a Roland, and either make them tankier, and then also put Fury on things to like help contribute to Shutdown. So he does have a use case. It's just like it's not like Eridor, who can mainline tank with your big team. He can like personal tank against like small groups and like skirmish. So I do see how he could be useful. So like him and Huette and like Roland could be really good. But that's pretty much it for this one. If you like this type of content, definitely like the video and subscribe. I'm going to be doing more triangle strategy content, and also drop a comment as to what you think some of the units excel in and why, because I think that's one of the more interesting things about the game, where even though a unit might have like a thing it's designed for, you can still use it in a different way by changing your team comp. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next video.